Welcome back, everybody. It's the last motherfucking episode of 40 Ounce Hip Hop for the 3-pack for the epilogue series. My boy, Michael, we are here. We already are blowing through this kind of quickly. I know for the release, probably doesn't feel like really quick, but we're just flowing with this, haven't we?
The 3-pack's been good. We came in with a plan, and it's been good.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm really excited to conclude this and kind of give y'all the last. And it is kind of a bittersweet conclusion, but some of the bittersweet conclusions are the best ones. And what better way to have a bittersweet conclusion than talk about our fallen soldiers of the game? And episode is going to be dedicated to our. Well, we'll call it a posthumous episode, and it's dedicated to all the artists that we lost over this past decade. So we have a long list, unfortunately, but we really got to highlight a lot of the artists that we personally noticed and I guess felt the most from their loss, because there's a lot of different artists that have died and passed over this past decade. So sorry if we don't sorry we don't mention everyone, but we tried to get people that really shook us the most.
Yeah, unfortunately hip-hop is a genre where artists die a lot, which is really unfortunate, and the 2010s were not any different in that way. We lost a lot of great ones.
Yeah, man, we really did. But before we get into this bittersweet episode, hope you have a sweet little thing, a big thing, or tall thing, or whatever thing next to you. And I hope you have a nice, refreshing 40 with you. Because it's about time we pour up.
Or maybe pour one out.
Yeah, we had to pour one out, actually.
For this one.
Actually, grab two. Pour one out, okay? Hell, grab one. 3. It's 3. We have a lot of people to go through. Grab 2, pour them out, pour one up for you. Let's keep rolling.
NK music on the track.
All right. So just to, like Kyle said, just to recap a lot of the artists that we left. The first big one to start the 2010 decade was Guru of Gangstar. He died in 2010 at the age of 48 from multiple myeloma. And that was really the first big death that we had to start the decade. In 2011, Nate Dogg passed away from a stroke. I didn't realize this. He was only 41 at the time. I would have thought he was a little bit older, but definitely one of the younger guys to die from the decade. Then in 2012, MCA of Beastie Boys, he passed away from cancer at the age of 47. That same year, in 2012, Capital Steez from Pro Era committed suicide and passed away at the age of 19. I'll get to that one a little bit more later. Lil Snoop, if you remember him with Meek Mill and Dream Chasers, he died in 2013. He was murdered at the age of 18. In 2015, Chinx Drugs was murdered at the age of 31. Sean Price passed away in 2015, an underground legend. Phife Dawg from A Tribe Called Quest, he passed away from diabetes complications at the age of 45 in 2016. Prodigy of Mobb Deep passed away at the age of 42. That's another one where he was younger than I would have thought. Passed away at the age of 42 from sickle cell anemia in 2017. Also in 2017, we have Lil Peep, who died from an overdose at the age of 21. I believe it was fentanyl and Xanax. And like I said, that was also in 2017. Then in 2018, that was a big year. Fredo Santana, he died from a seizure at the age of 27. Craig Mack, remember, here comes the brand new flavor in your ear, that guy. Craig Mack, he died from heart failure at the age of 47. XXXTentacion was murdered at the age of 20, and Mac Miller died from an overdose at the age of 26. I believe that was fentanyl and alcohol. And then 2019, we had Nipsey Hussle, who was murdered at the age of 33, and Juice WRLD, who died from overdose at the age of 21. Those are the big ones.
That's a lot. And a couple of other ones I'd like to mention are Slim Duncan. Did you mention Heavy D?
I did not.
Yeah, Heavy D in 2011, Slim Duncan 2011. Lord Infamous, 3-6 Mafia 2013. Dobie 2013. And Speaker Knockers 2014. Man, that's even though that long list you just gave, I'm like, oh yeah, we still have more.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's a very saddening thing to think about. Like, it's actually wild. But I mean, of that list, well, some of the greats, but like, have you found yourself listening to some of them more after their passing?
Yeah, I think there's that one was really difficult for me to think about when I was running through that list of people who passed away, because most of those guys, they were already pretty popular before they passed away, right? And so I think Lil Peep was a guy who I honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't know who he was until he passed away. I had never heard of him until then. But I don't know. I wouldn't say I listened to him a lot after his death, just because he's not quite my taste, I guess. But I think Capital Steez is one guy who I only briefly knew about before his passing. I don't know, maybe I had been listening to Pro Era for probably less than a month at that point that he passed away. And so at that point, all I had really heard from Pro Era was Joey Badass, and so in 1999. And so I think after Steez's death, I listened to Peep the Apocalypse a lot, the Pro Era mixtape that heavily features Capital Steez. And then, of course, Capital Steez's mixtape, American Corruption, I listened to a lot. I mean, it's a great mixtape, and so, but I definitely did not listen to it until after I realized he passed away. So I would go with Capital Steez as someone who I listened to a lot more afterwards.
That's understandable. It's definitely understandable. I can say the way I definitely listened to Steez more once he passed. And same thing for funny thing with Heavy D, it was like my dad used to play Heavy D a lot, and like he still does a lot. So I want to say like, yeah, listen to more, but I'm like, not really. Just I was always hearing this man since I was a kid, so it's kind of like, yeah, I listen to more on my own, but it's not necessarily more volume because he's just always been around. So it's interesting to hear. That was like one of the first hip hop deaths. I was like, I'm moved by this because even though I don't listen to you, like I don't seek you out to listen to you all the time, so I'm moved by this because it's like hearing your songs, Heavy D and the Boys, is like part of my childhood, like memories. I'm like, dang, I could pinpoint like, oh, I remember hearing this song in the back of this time. It's very odd. That was like the first time that like occurred. If Common died, that'd probably be like another person. I'm like, oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like all his car rides. but the person that I personally went out my way to listen to more was Lil Peep. Actually, it's funny.
Yeah, funny I say that then.
Because two people actually, Lil Peep and Juice WRLD. And Lil Peep specifically, because I remember liking certain artists that were similar to him, but I just I wasn't really big on Peep. I just wasn't. songs that people kept on showing me, I wasn't really a fan of. But once I started digging into his catalog more and kind of did on my own, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I see it. I understand it. And it's kind of like he had a space. He had a potential to like inhabit a good space for hip hop and like what he could have accomplished. And I felt the same for Juice WRLD. That's the thing, because both of them have really dark themes and really kind of a vulnerable sense of loss in their music. As not necessarily loss of like, yes, loss of love and loss of kind of direction, but then it's really a sense of like trying to cope with things. And I feel like people always want to say they're like, oh, I'm a rock star. Like, we're rock stars in hip hop. It's like, yeah, but I feel like people like Peep and Juice WRLD definitely encapsulated a pretty good side or way of saying like the darker side of that rock star lifestyle pretty well, that we don't get very often, that we didn't get as often, but like as well as packaged as well as they did. Because honestly, I'm gonna say like Juice WRLD, I was not a fan of his. It wasn't like he was bad. I just was not listening to Juice WRLD projects like at all until I seen him live in concert. Well, ironically, 2 months before he died, I was like, I seen him live, and I seen him like, oh man, this is actually a really good song. He's a really good performer. And as soon as I'm thinking like, dang, I want to listen more to him, he dies, and that it's kind of like that prompted me. You know, I need to really look into this artist's music more. And same thing with Nipsey Hussle. Like I remember listening to Crenshaw tape a lot, but then I finally went back and listened to like Mailbox Money and Victory Lap, which why I said on the previous episode, like I would not mind including Victory Lap at all in the list if I was going to take out repeats.
Yeah, just a couple side notes before we move on. I think it's always interesting that Lil Peep and Juice WRLD, they're always kind of like lumped in together, even though like over 2 years between when they passed away. But I guess because the way they died, and then like you said, the themes of their music are so similar in that way that they're often lumped together. I'm pretty sure when Juice WRLD passed away, there was like a fan. It may have not even been fan made, but like a SoundCloud song that had them mashed up together. It was like "Rest in Peace, Legends" or something like that. I forgot the name of it. And then
same thing with X.
Yeah. And then the Nipsey Hussle passing was really interesting because he had been known for such a long time at that point. Yet, because Victory Lap was technically his debut album, right? I think Victory Lap was technically his debut album. So it's kind of crazy because like he passed away like 1 year after Victory Lap came out, I'm pretty sure. And so I don't know, it was like he had been around, so many people had developed like he had a big fan base at that point, I guess is what I'm saying. But then because of Victory Lap, he also was kind of at his peak popularity, and so it was really interesting that that's when he passed away.
Yeah, Victory Lap was his debut album because I'm like, for a second I was thinking like, was that really his debut? Everything else was considered a mixtape, which is kind of crazy because he had album more than mixtapes, but
for sure,
wild. But which that's also pretty sad to think about, and because someone who's right on the cusp of like propelling to the next level of stardom. Because Nipsey's been around since 2005, man. Like I remember when I first moved to Florida, I remember my brother and my cousins playing Nipsey Hussle, and I'm like, oh, who's this? now I'm like, dang, Nipsey. And similar to someone who's kind of like at the cusp of, I guess, their peak popularity, Mac Miller, I would say, because Mac Miller just progressively each project just kind of grew in like his following, and everyone kind of had not everyone, but he kind of reached a point where people were like, yo, even if you don't listen to rap like that, you probably will like a Mac Miller song. You'll probably find some Mac Miller song you'll be like, I could vibe with this. I could play some, like, I was able to play songs from Faces around people that don't listen to anything like Faces. I was able to play songs from watch the movies with the sound off around people double my age. Just, he kind of reached a point in some songs from Divine Feminine that people were like, oh my god. I knew people that I would never guess loved the album. So I think it's kind of sad that you dropped Swimming and Circles, and then both really critically acclaimed projects, but doesn't get to live to see the benefits and reap the rewards of that.
Well, so speaking of those Mac Miller albums, what do you consider to be your personal favorite best posthumous release from this past decade? I know for me, it was honestly a really difficult question to answer, because in decades past, it was like, Don Cluminati, The 7 Day Theory was technically a posthumous release. Like there's been legendary hip hop albums that came out after rappers died. And so it's not really like the 90s where you have like all-time classic albums being released posthumously. So.
Yeah, it's usually not the case anymore. Especially in the, I can tell you one of the most disappointing is probably XXXTentacion, because it just feels like a bunch of demos and just does not have heart in it, in those releases.
You're talking about
which
Skins?
I really hope changes. Yeah, Skins is better than the other one. The second one that dropped, I forgot what the second one's even called, but I remember listening to it while I was traveling one time, and I was like, wow, this should not have came out.
Well, I just asked because I have Skins written down here as like probably my second favorite posthumous release, which is so ridiculous because I don't even like it that much. But there's really only one other posthumous release that I liked a lot. So it's kind of funny because I put Skins because off the top of my head, there's X songs on there that I actually like. And so, yeah, I don't know. I wrote it down, which is funny.
Yeah, no, Skins is definitely one I would take Skins over other ones for sure, because there are songs on there I like, but the second one I was like, there's a half a song that I like on the second album. Why is there only half a song that I like from this man?
For sure, I didn't like
that's crazy. I was like 20-something tracks. That is not good. But I say my favorite probably just gonna say, I'm gonna say Circles. That's my favorite, because Circles gets me in the mood, man. I'm just like, man, it's really good, but it's also really sad. It's just like, oh, you like 2009 on Swimming? You like Jet Fuel? Oh, you want to go back to Earth? Yeah, we won't take you back to Earth, all right? Take a little past that, straight to hell, because this sucks. This is not good. This is excellent music, but it's like, man, this is sad, because I'm like, damn, can't get any more of this. Also, it was a cool test. It's a cool example of seeing someone carry on another person's work, like with care. And I think that's the only reason I really bring up X, is because I feel like the music is not being taken care of in a posthumous way. Even like a same thing with like Michael Jackson's Escape album. It at least you could tell that like, hey, we took time and effort to put this album to make it sound like something that they would do. Even when we updated the sounds and whatnot, it sounds like at least reminiscent of the past and who that person was. Mac's Project Circles, I think, is a great example of someone taking the work and doing that instead of what happened with X.
Well, how long after Mac Miller's death did Circles come out? Like 1 year, maybe?
I want to say probably like, if even that. I
Maybe
remember,
a little less.
Because I remember when the producer was talking about like there's supposed to be swimming and circles. This was like a double kind of project kind of thing, but kind of similar to Oxnard, and Ventura from Anderson .Paak. Almost sister projects.
Apparently Circles came out in January of 2020, which does not sound right to me at all, but apparently that's what Wikipedia says. That's cool. It'll still count. It'll still count as your pick.
Yeah, it still counts.
Close enough to the last decade.
Yeah, because if not that, then I'd probably say... I'd probably say that still. Because the Juice WRLD posthumous album wasn't like... I expected worse, because after I was like, oh man, as my XXXTentacion posthumous albums are not good, but I was pleasantly surprised with a few tracks on there.
The Legends Never Die from 2020. Yeah, we got some good 2020 ones for sure.
Yeah, so it's kind of like those are my two.
So I went with.
So who shook you the hardest?
Well, hold on.
Oh yeah.
Because Skins isn't my final pick for posthumous.
Hey, you said number two. You're right.
Yes, I went with One of the Best Yet by Gangstar. Because I think for two reasons. Because it's a solid album. It's a solid 7 out of 10 album. But I think it's one of those albums that no one really cared how good it was, because it came out 9 years after Guru passed away. So when it came out, everyone was just like, what? Like, how did this happen? How has he had like this much? Because it's like probably like 35 to 40 minutes long of an album. Like, how does he have this much content lying around and it's just now being put into an album, you know? And so, and there's some good songs on there, like Lights Out, and the one with J. Cole is really good too. So that's my pick. One of the Best Yet by Gangstar.
That's a good pick. Because it's kind of similar to, it's almost like if Act 2 dropped and it didn't have any rollout. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, it is what it is. We dropped it. It's just kind of odd.
Yeah, there certainly wasn't hype created for it at all. Like, I don't really remember being there any buzz about it coming out. I just remember when it came out, people were more like, oh. They're like, oh, I thought this guy has been dead for 9 years.
No more music.
Yeah. All right. So I'll go ahead and say the rapper that shook me the hardest. The first person who comes to mind was Steppa J. Groggs from Injury Reserve, but that was technically 2020. So if I'm going for the decade, that one was a little bit tougher. I thought about saying Mac Miller just because, like, kind of like what you were saying with Heavy D. Like, Mac Miller's death would have felt different than Heavy D's death, because Mac Miller really felt like a rapper that we saw their career begin and saw them grow and grow until we saw their career end tragically. So, like, I thought about Mac Miller because, like, we have that time connection with him, you know, as far as being similarly aged and following his career as it grew and then ended. So I kind of thought about Mac Miller, but I think I'm gonna go with Capital Steez, which is funny because I mentioned Capital Steez for an artist I listened to more after they passed away. Because if I'm being completely honest, like I only knew about Capital Steez for like a week or a couple weeks before he passed away. And that's just because I started listening to Joey Badass, which of course, like Capital Steez appears on 1999. So that's really all I knew about him for. And so I just remember it was crazy because, well, first of all, I was in New York at the time that he died. So that was kind of cool because it's like I was in the city when he passed away. But on the other hand, it was kind of crazy because like that whole week I'm on Christmas vacation. I'm not really listening to music. So it's just kind of crazy because I get back home and I find out that like this band passed away. And I'm like, what? Like I just started listening to him 2 weeks ago and you're telling me he's passed away? And so then you find out how he passed away and you realize that he kind of started acting a little more like paranoid and eerie with a lot of the things that he was rapping about. And you realize that he tweeted "the end" right before he jumped off a building to commit suicide. And then even like a lot of the stuff that's happened after his death, like what is it, King Capital? Like what's the name of the I forget the name of it, but there's been so many complications about releasing his debut album. I forget what they're supposed to name it. But and then Pro Era does the Steez Festival every year, and I know there's controversy of like Capital Steez's family members. And then just a lot of the way a lot of people have reacted about his death. I remember I think it was maybe Issa Gold from Underachievers, like going off on YouTube or something about like misconceptions about his death. I remember Troy Ave getting in a beef with Pro Era for making fun of his death. And so, I think at the time that it happened, it shook me pretty hard because it was like I just started listening to this guy. And I was there, like I was in that city when he passed away. So I got Capital Steez as my answer.
Solid reason. I think for a similar reason, I would probably say, because for me, it was a toss-up. Because like I said, Heavy D was like, it's something that's kind of present and like I attach a lot of memories to. But for a similar reason, I'd probably say Juice or X. And the reason, and because Mac was my first one at first. I was like, okay. Because, like I said, there's someone I really did not like music-wise. Slowly over time became like, someone I have in rotation a lot. And like, I really enjoy their music. I really enjoy them as artists. I think they're really great. It's when they died. I remember going to a freaking workout. And I remember seeing my homie. And he's like, we didn't say, this is the first time I've seen one of my homies in a minute. Like, it's been months. And we look at each other. And he just says, Mac? I was like, Mac. He hugs me. And bro looked like he's about to cry. I was like, bro. I was like, Cam, it's okay. We'll be alright. Because he used to go. I remember when Mac came to town a few times, and he would go to every show. And I remember he told me, he's like, "Oh, you want to come? You want to?" I'm like, bro. Every time he used to tell me you want to come, like, this always has something to do. I would never be in town. I'm like, God dang. So it was just so. That was a really surreal experience to be like how connecting Mac was. But X and Juice hit me a little different because X was a really odd case and a really odd person in hip hop. Because because he is a polarizing figure. Like, no matter how you slice it, that man is a polarizing figure. He has a really wild past, but also crazy amount of potential, and like also a lot of. It's like for every positive action that he's done, there's also like you could bring up a bunch of negative, I guess, interactions he's had with whether it be beefing with other artists, whether it be personal stuff that he's had. Different is a lot of things that he was a very complex guy, but it was almost like, but because he was so young, it was really sad to see him die, because from the same state, we're both like, he's a very, it felt like he was snuffed out before we could really ever get a true understanding of who the man was. Like,
For sure.
because it was really, which is really sad, because it was like, for someone that was said to have so many plans, and like one side of hip hop's like, yo, this man's a great person. The other side's like, I don't believe him. It really sucked to see someone die like that and go out before they could even do half of the potentially good things they could have done. If like that's how it would have played out. I think just that was a really interesting situation to see. That's what say that. It kind of showed me, kind of like, and just the way he died, like he got shot. Because people were saying like, yo, he keeps on acting like that. We're gonna get that boy. Even like I always remember Joe Budden and DJ Academics like, so you're gonna get them boys killed. And what do we see?
Yeah, like not to be disrespectful, but I kind of remember like at the time, obviously like not in the time of his death because that is disrespectful, but like leading up to it, I remember like that because he was only famous for like a year and a half, like famous for a year and a half, and like in that time he had just gotten so much negative attention for things that he had done that I remember a lot of people saying like, oh yeah, if there's going to be a rapper who tragically gets killed at a young age, it's going to be him, which is so crazy to say, but like I guess they were right.
And yeah, that's the crazy thing about it. That's the thing that's why I say it kind of put me, I want to put him first, because I feel like the Juice thing for me is just because I became a fan and I was like, oh dang, this is actually really nice, and he dies 2 months later. I'm like, really? That's crazy, and it's fortunate that I've kind of come to appreciate your music at this time, but it also was kind of surreal because I'm like, man, I was like, I just seen you a few feet away from me, and now you're gone. It's wild. But the next thing I think was wilder because it was like people kept saying that, and people kind of like, yo, he needs to relax, or like, hey, this is, like I said, he's going down the wrong path, and he did, because even though he did, it was like he was still getting the beef and still kind of getting all this negative attention, but then he would always not announce, but he would always spew this positive message. It was really interesting to see, like this weird dichotomy of like, hey, I do negative things, but I do negative things, but I also do a lot of positive things. I also encourage a lot of positive things, but I still am pro, like, I'll whoop your ass, but I want to be friends with y'all. It was just the wildest thing to see, but it was really, I think it would have been a really interesting thing to see a person like that in hip-hop if they had a chance, going for it. If they actually finally got to live, I wonder how hip-hop would have, what was the reception would have been for that, How would that have changed the game?
For sure. Yeah. And it was weird too, because as time went on, it increasingly got more and more difficult to have an opinion on him because 2018 is when the Question Mark EP came out, and I think that was a lot of people's favorite project from him. But at the same time, that's also when a lot of the stuff about not bad things that he was currently doing, but bad things that he had done started resurfacing big time. Like I remember I think I remember a Complex article, and I remember a Reddit article that was like a compilation of just like videos of him beating dudes up, and then all the different accusations that his ex-girlfriend was bringing up in court. And it was
horrifying.
Horrifying. It
was horrifying. It was not. It was.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like that's the thing that makes it really hard to say. Is like, yo, this is a very. He's talented dude. Yes, he has a really cult following, but at the same time, like I said, good kind of message. But then, dog, you have some horrible actions that are and accusations and whatnot going at you, and some stuff. And we do not victim blame here. We do not do anything. Like I really wish to see how that would have played out. Like, was he really this person? Was he really just trying to reform himself? Would he be accepted like that? I mean, I think he could have seen that Tory Lanez and other people and Famous Dex is beat women on camera is like kind of like, I'm pretty sure he would have been accepted. But it would have been interesting to see for such a polarizing person like that, who was on track to be on a bigger stage than even Tory Lanez and Dex. How would hip hop have responded to that? You know?
Yeah, and I will say, as far as celebrity deaths go, the most my phone has ever blown up from a celebrity death, it's got to be a tie between Kobe Bryant and XXXTentacion. Like, it was just so. I just remember how crazy it was when he died, and because at first we knew he was shot, but we didn't know if he was dead yet. And I just remember like that whole maybe 60 minutes of it, of just learning about everything. I just remember my phone blowing up so much the whole time.
Man, I remember getting texts from all over and snaps like, yo, X is dead. I'm like, what? Nah, no way. Same thing with Groggs, because, oh man, when Groggs died out, it's like, nah, Groggs. Nah, not him. Because we just recorded our injury reserve episode.
Mm-hmm.
Just finished that. And so, since we're recording this in 2021, RIP to MF Doom. All caps when you spell that man's name. And rest in peace, man, because Jesus.
Yeah.
That one, I was not expecting.
Yeah, I don't get it, man. How come Groggs has to pass away 3 days after we record an injury reserve episode, and then 2 days before we record a dead rapper tribute episode, we find out that one of the 20 greatest rappers of all time passes away? It's wild stuff. Wild stuff.
Yes, I was listening to all caps that day. I woke up and was like, oh man. I was throwing on Mad Villainy. And I see the news. I'm like, ain't this some shit? Like, and it was such a wild thing that he died on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
The man that wears a mask dies on Halloween. What? It's like, that's great. And it's also wild to think that two people that are known for wearing masks, Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther and MF Doom, died. Had to put the mask down on the year that everyone else had to mask up for COVID. That's some wild ass irony.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I guess if there's any other rappers you want to highlight that maybe you didn't mention in the questions that we had, just some Any thoughts that you have on some certain rappers dying? I know I have a couple, but I guess I'll let you go first.
Really just Lord Infamous of 3-6. Because I really got into 3-6 over the years. While I listened to Juicy J, and also actually working out with a trainer. I remember I was playing some 3-6, and he was like, "Hey, do you listen to like Project Bat's first project? Have you listened to like some demo stuff from 3-6?" I'm like, "Nah." He shared it with me. I was listening to that. I was like, "This is really good stuff," and it's kind of sucked when, like, looking back, like, dang, I wish I could have seen them all together in concert. That'd been nice. Bankroll Fresh, because that's another person I listen to more once they pass. And same thing with Shawty Low, because even though there's certain songs from Shawty Low that I really always liked, like, if you don't like They Know, I can't trust you as a person. Like, you don't know shit. But both of those two are people as I remember hearing. I'm like, dang, that sucks. Like, they have hot songs out, but they didn't really get to capitalize fully. And it was really interesting to see, like, during the verses with Jeezy and Gucci, like, I'm watching the rounds and I'm like, yeah, you play a Bankroll song. I'm like, yeah, that's one of my favorite songs for you. And, like, you just, like, oh, you won the round automatically in people's opinion. Like, won the round with Bankroll. Oh, you played a song with Shawty Low? Won the round automatically. Which is a testament to, like, the collaboration synergy they had with other artists. I think that's kind of saddening, but also cool to see how they how the influence stays at the time. And Fredo Santana, because I used to play Issues religiously with him and Maxo. So yeah, bro, RP Fredo.
Yeah, and on the Superlatives episode, I mentioned "Jealous" by Fredo and Kendrick Lamar being one of my favorite songs too.
Yeah, man. So, what about you?
So I think one rapper I want to highlight is Prodigy. And obviously Prodigy is someone who is very well recognized as a legendary rapper. So I don't think it's anything newsworthy for me to say that I consider myself a big Prodigy fan. But one thing I wanted to highlight is that I think he's one of my favorite rhymers of all time, like specifically rhyming. Because people like Master Ace, Eminem, Big Pun, like, they get a lot of recognition for doing complex multi-syllable rhymes. I think Prodigy is a really underrated guy for his ability to just kind of like like effortlessly rhyme. Like, if he has to, he'll rhyme two words that don't rhyme, but it doesn't feel wrong.
That's a good way to put it.
He just does it, and, like, you don't question it, and he makes it work. And so I thought about one of my favorite verses of his to try to, like, highlight his rhyming ability. And so I went with his verse on Eye for an Eye, which is also a very popular song for Nas's guest feature, which is one of the best guest features of all time. Prodigy holds his own on the song. And there's a line of 6 bars where he rhymes really, yeah, failure, care of you, inferior, your area, and scarier. So, like, you got six phrases there that don't rhyme at all, and he makes them all rhyme and, like, flow effortlessly, because he goes like, really, yeah, failure, carry ya, inferior, your area, scarier. Like, he makes them all rhyme. And so, yeah, I wanted to highlight that. It's one of my favorite songs of all time, and it's one of my favorite Prodigy verses of all time. And I think it's a perfect way of showcasing, like, he's probably my favorite effortless rhymer of all time.
Now, Prodigy, and he was also a really good illustrator, because even with Eye for Eye, like, I feel like a lot of underrated talent in hip hop is imagery and is like, how do you set up the scene for what you're doing? Similar, well, he's 2020 death, but King Von, I would give for, like, his storytelling and, like, how he set up the imagery. But, like, Prodigy is someone that is, I think, a forefather in one of these Because like I might crack a smile, but ain't damn thing funny. A cough in the dirt where your hands get muddy. Plus the outcome turns out to be lovely. Got cheese in my pocket, hit off my main squeeze. Push back the sunroof of the cold air breeze. It just sounds like it just flows so well, and the imagery and the scene comes up so easily. It's excellent. I think it's very. We see that nowadays, but some people do it to a more simplistic degree. Others do it to even higher, maybe. But I think without people like Prodigy, we would not have it be such a mainstay in such a kind of. We didn't have the bar set so high. Like, all right, this is what you need to do. This is what you should aim to do as a rhymer.
Yeah, I know. ASAP Rocky's verse on the Work remix where he rhymes like Columbine with Pakistan.
Yeah.
And he like goes on. I remember like listening to that. I'm like, without Prodigy, you wouldn't be rhyming like that. And so someone else I wanted to highlight was Guru of Gangstar. Of course, DJ Premier is still alive, and that's the duo that formed Gangstar. And because if I'm just trying to think about my favorite album from someone who passed away from this decade, it might be, and you know, it can be from whenever point that they were making music. It would probably be Moment of Truth for me, which is their 1998 album. And I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but that's like one of my favorite albums of all time. I do consider myself a big Gangstar fan, but a lot of their like Hard to Earn, I think, came out in 1994. And a lot of their music that came out before then, it just sounds, you know, it sounds pretty dated. But Moment of Truth is one where it's recent enough in 1998 that it's very fresh sounding. And
it holds up really well.
It holds up super well. Songs like Moment of Truth, Work, Above the Clouds, You Know My Steez, Robin Hood Theory, Betrayal, like those are some of my favorite, those probably are my favorite Gangstar songs right there. And they're all on the album, just right there. That's one of my favorite albums of all time. So I thought I'd shout out Gangstar because I kind of got curious, like, okay, out of all these people who passed away, who has my favorite album out of all of them? And yeah, it's probably Gangstar.
Definitely makes sense. Definitely. And honestly, I feel like on the list they're definitely among some of the biggest impacts on hip hop that we have on the list. Because a lot of these people are having crazy impact, but it's just to even say that that Gangstar and the legacy that Gangstar has is like a dynamic group in hip hop. It's like if I could compare them to, if they're amongst the likes of like Outkast and can hold, then I'm like, your legacy's solidified forever. It's kind of similar to like Heavy D and the Boys. It's like, but I think even could be possibly even more relevant to today because the sound's more updated.
And one more guy I wanted to give a little shout out to was Ching Struggs. And it's kind of funny because I remember you and me especially, like we always kind of liked him, but ironically, like I don't think we really liked him that much. We always joked about liking him. And because he had some fire songs that we liked a lot. We liked the I'm a Coke Boy remix.
Yeah.
With P. Diddy and Rick Ross. He had a song with Wale that we liked a lot, where he's like, Ching Struggs, I done blew up like a minefield. I remember that we loved that line a lot. And I mean, of course, and he was a Coke Boy with French Montana. And I don't know, I don't think we really liked Coke Boys that much, like I said, but we used to listen to their music. So I just remember when he died, it was kind of wild because it's like, man, this dude got murdered and like we low key liked him a lot. So that's another one where I was like, I have to recognize him because
he is kind of like
he definitely played a big part in our lives. We listened to him for sure.
No, I definitely was playing Coke Boy tapes. Looking forward to Chinks and French, to be honest with you. And also, like, I think we have like a more personal connection with Coke Boys because like we used to listen to them, but then we also have like a friend that is very much so a cover boy
Yeah,
in his own right. So it's like, yes, this is who else? Or who is better to embody the Chinks Drugs music?
for sure.
Oh man, RP Chinks, and RP to
Yes.
everyone on this list.
For sure.
And another person was shout MCA, because I was not a big Beastie Boys fan until I listened to. I remember I finally listened to their music in like 2014, I want to say, and then I was like, oh wow, I understand the hype and the legacy now, because their music and MCA's voice, MCA's voice is. Whenever people were kind of like, oh, why is Michi Darko's voice so ugly? Young Thug with all this, his voice is all nasty. I'm like, bruh, MCA been doing this since the 90s. It's like, and his MCA's voice sounds like, if you ever watched Yu Yu Hakusho with this anime, it's a great one. Please watch it. If you like Hunter x Hunter, you're gonna like Yu Yu Hakusho. But there's a character named Kuwabara, and MCA is like Rap Game's Kuwabara, and that is both like voice wise, and I freaking love it because his voice is so unique and it's so raspy. It's almost similar. It kind of made other voices acceptable, like odd kind of styles and odd gruffness to the voice, like more mainstream. So I really do like it, and I really did come to enjoy Beastie Boys music, especially because all three of them, their voices are mad different. So I feel like it's kind of similar to Flatbush Zombies in a sense, because Eric R. Elliott does not sound anything like Juice, and then Michi is Meech. Like, so I feel like it's kind of like a weird predecessor way, and they're like weird spiritual successor kind of way to Beast.
Yeah, he's probably the earliest rapper. Because Licensed to Ill and Paul's Boutique, that was like 1986, 1987, something like that. So he's probably the first rapper to have a unique voice, like you were saying. He set the tone for guys like Danny Brown and Michi Darko, for sure.
Man. For real. But that's about it, man. I think if there's anyone else we miss, please give them a shout out in the comments or hit us up. Definitely love to talk about it. It's been a long decade. Hopefully there's a lot less deaths this decade. I mean, lost a couple already, but
yeah, off to a poor start.
Off to a very poor start. But hopefully it gets better from here, and hopefully you guys spend time with your loved ones and stay safe out there, and may all this 40s that you're drinking with us not induce liver failure anytime soon. And it's 2021. Let's try to make this year better and get the decade back on track.
Yes. And enjoy that 40-ounce 3-pack.
Enjoy the 40-ounce 3-pack. Sip slow. Post them up. You already know. Peace, y'all.
Peace.